You're watching Look East from the BBC. Coming up, a song for Afghanistan.
In 1896, get it right.
Even I wasn't born then.
Queen Victoria was on the throne. Overseas trade was flourishing and the landed gentry were importing exotic species of deer from the Orient. Some of them went to the stately surroundings of Woburn Abbey in Bedfordshire.
Within 50 years, the country was at war, and the army was camped out at Woburn. Not much could get in, but somebody left a gate open and the deer got out, and our landscape would never be the same again. Our environment reporter Richard Daniel has been on the trail of the Chinese water deer.
This is Woburn Abbey, famous for its safari park and its deer park. The 11th Duke of Bedford collected deer from around the world. They were brought back here to decorate his parkland. Amongst them, muntjac and Chinese water deer.
It's a wonderful collection. At one time there was 40 different species of deer in the park, which was probably the greatest collection of deer ever brought together anywhere. But of course, you know, nowadays we're down to 9 different species. Some species have coped better than others, you know, like the muntjac, you know, have done really well with their introduction.
The Chinese deer thrived, and some spread beyond the park. It's estimated that there are now 150,000 muntjac in the wild.
The thing about deer is that they nibble off all the plants. They'll nibble off the hazel, they'll nibble off even brambles, which you might not think they would, being so sharp and spiny. But you have to remember that the plant species support a whole host of animal species. So within thickets like this, you can find dormice. The nectar of the bramble and of all the flowers are really good for butterflies, so lots of butterflies in here. And also ground-nesting birds like nightingales. Once the deer have eaten all that shrub layer out, they've got nowhere to live.
The muntjac isn't the only Chinese deer on the loose. There's also the Chinese water deer. It's similar in size to the muntjac, but as its name suggests, it loves wetlands, places like the fens and the Broads. Chinese water deer were introduced to Woburn in 1896, but a few escaped during the Second World War. They've now spread to Bedfordshire, the Norfolk and Suffolk Broads, and here in the Cambridgeshire Fens.
On a world scale, well, they're officially classified as vulnerable because there are relatively few of them left in China. And here in England, we've got something like 30% of the world's population of Chinese water deer.
Now, the spread of the muntjac and the Chinese water deer probably isn't what the 11th Duke of Bedford intended. But like it or not, they're both here to stay.
You can see a full report on that in Inside Out tonight at 7:30 on BBC One. If you want to see a muntjac, you can come to my garden.
Now, there have been some great charity records in the past. Some pretty bad ones as well. Do They Know It's Christmas set the standard. More recently we had the song for the victims of the Haiti earthquake. Today, a new one.
It's the idea of Andy Blackford, who lives near the army base at Bassingbourn in Cambridgeshire. He wants to help the soldiers and has come up with what he describes as Billy Bragg meets Verdi's Requiem.
Today, these youngsters added their voices to a song written about a war elsewhere in the world, but inspired by what Andy Blackford's seen close to home near Bassingbourn Barracks.
We see streams of young people getting off the train at Royston, all bright-eyed and off to train to be in the forces, and of course we know that within a few weeks they're going to be in Afghanistan.
Andy's been in bands all his life. That's him on the right. They supported Genesis. This latest project is pretty rock and roll too.
We recorded the band part of it in the Kinks studio in North London. And we were visited by a guy called Paul Moran, who we weren't really expecting to turn up, but he's Van Morrison's keyboard player, and he came along and played piano for us, which was fantastic, I must say.
The eldest faces here are 18, the same age as several soldiers killed in the conflict.
I think it's really important because there's so many young people who are fighting in Afghanistan, and it's quite hard to understand and relate to what's going on.
There are a lot of people out there today who are getting injured, and a lot of aftercare is needed for them, and I think it's really important.
To have all this help and to have this big choral chorus and everything, and we just think it's in a very good cause. No, it's very satisfying, the whole thing. It's sounding really good.
The song should be out in April. All the profits will go to Help for Heroes. Mike Cartwright, BBC Look East, Hertfordshire.
I have plenty of Requiem, not too much Billy Bragg, but it sounds
nice
good.
Voices,
yes,
yes.
great.
Jim, hello.
Hello.
What's the weather doing then?
It's staying cold, I'm afraid. We've had some very low temperatures last night. The satellite picture gives a clue as to where they might have been. This was at 9 o'clock this morning, and you can see